At 3 in the morning on the west bank of the Rhine, March 1945, a German listening post logged the sounds of an armored division assembling to cross the river. The log was accurate. The division did not exist. The listening post had heard tank engines moving at low speed, the low-register groan of heavy armor in a low gear, distinct from the lighter note of the same vehicle on flat ground. It had heard the rhythmic clank of tread plates on frozen road, the high whine of an engine under heavy load, NCO voices carrying across open water at the volume of someone correcting a subordinate in real time. Then the sounds of bridge construction, steel on concrete, timber being offloaded from trucks, the organized noise of a crossing being prepared. By morning, the report had joined others from across the 13 Corps front. German artillery observers added their assessments. A reconnaissance aircraft swept the area and brought back photographs of what appeared to be a divisional assembly area, vehicle parks, artillery emplacements, the characteristic spacing of two separate formations. Corps Command drew the obvious conclusion. The sounds had been recorded at Fort Knox, Kentucky in the summer of 1944, and were being played back through 500-watt speakers mounted in the cargo beds of American half-tracks parked 2 miles from their position. The library they drew from included a track of an NCO telling someone to put a cigarette out, audible enough at high volume to carry across open ground as a fragment of comprehensible command, because a training recording that sounded like soldiers playing soldiers would not fool anyone. The recording library had been built to fool the German soldier pressing his headphones tight and filing his report, and it had worked. The unit producing those sounds had 145 men. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was activated on January 20th, 1944. The underlying logic was that deception run across enough intelligence channels in parallel could produce the same tactical result as an actual force without requiring one. The British had demonstrated the principle in North Africa, where inflatable equipment and false radio traffic had redirected German attention on multiple occasions. The American version added a third layer the British had not fully developed: sound at a range and fidelity that made it indistinguishable from the genuine article. The visual component of the 23rd tends to receive the most attention. The 603rd Camouflage Engineer Battalion worked with rubber M4 Shermans that inflated to full size in under 20 minutes and were accurate enough to pass aerial photograph analysis conducted by trained analysts. The 603rd drew its personnel from art programs in New York, and Philadelphia. Bill Blass was assigned to it. So was Ellsworth Kelly, who arrived in France at 21 and produced somewhere in the range of 300 sketches and paintings during the European campaign, not one of which had anything to do with camouflage engineering. What it had to do with was that he could not stop drawing. He did not discuss what the 603rd actually did until the unit's classified status was lifted in 1996. The rubber equipment required daylight, proximity, or aerial observation to work. The sound worked at 15 miles, in darkness, in fog, in weather that made visual observation impossible. The 3D 132nd Signal Service Company's primary weapon was 500-pound speakers mounted on M3A1 half-track beds, each driven by a 500-watt amplifier running off an onboard generator. The speaker mounts folded flat when not deployed, leaving a vehicle indistinguishable in a convoy. The crews had nicknamed the hand-crank deployment mechanism the coffee grinder, which indicates something about the frequency with which they were running it under time pressure. Bell Laboratories engineers had developed the projection system, and they brought to it the approach used for transmission problems: tables. The atmospheric variables that affect an artillery shell's trajectory, wind speed, temperature gradient between ground level and 30 feet above it, surface roughness between source and target, also determine how far a broadcast sound travels and whether it arrives intact at a particular point. The Bell Labs engineers developed firing tables for the speakers on the same model as those used to range a howitzer battery. A mobile weather station came with the unit for this purpose. Before any broadcast, the operator took atmospheric readings and calculated effective range and bearing. What a given listening post would hear, the apparent direction and strength of the sound, could be adjusted with something close to the precision of a ranging calculation. The recordings came from a Bell Labs mobile studio sent to Fort Knox in the summer of 1944. The library ran to hundreds of tracks. Tanks moving uphill, tanks moving downhill. A trained listener can tell the difference from the engine note under load. Trucks grinding through gear changes. Bridge engineers offloading timber in darkness. Infantry in column on asphalt versus gravel. Officers giving orders at close range. For playback, the 3130 Sicken used wire recorders running .0006-inch steel wire at 5 feet per second on 2-mile spools, each reel providing 30 minutes of continuous audio. The recordings were excellent. They had to be. Whether any specific forward unit filed a formal complaint about armored activity that appeared at night and left no visual evidence by morning is not established in the 3111 30-second surviving records, which are organized by operation and by American side outcome, rather than by what the listening posts reported in response. The German side record, where it exists, comes through captured documents and prisoner interrogations. The prisoner statement from the Koblenz sector is the clearest indication in the available record of what a soldier in that position concluded from the experience. In December 1944, in Luxembourg, the 23rd ran Operation KOBLENZ. The objective was to simulate an armored buildup along the 8-Corps front and hold enemy units in position through the end of the month. Real tanks were moved to Osweiler during daylight hours. After dark, the sonic trucks moved forward and the number of armored vehicles the German posts could detect on the American side tripled. The operation ran from the 6th to the 14th. Von Rundstedt's Ardennes offensive began on the 16th, which made any assessment of what Koblenz had or had not accomplished effectively impossible to separate from the noise of the larger event. The unit's files include a prisoner statement taken from a German soldier captured in that sector in the days following the opening of the Bulge. He had believed he was facing the 75th Infantry Division. The 75th had not been in that sector at all during the period he named. It had been pulled from the area 4 days before the offensive, its departure covered by sonic and radio deception. He had been confused by sound. Operation VIERSEN was the 23rd's last operation, and by their own operational assessment, their best. It ran from March 18th to March 24th, 1945. The 9th Army's actual crossing point was in 6th Corps Zone. The 23rd would simulate 2 divisions, the 30th and 79th Infantry, totaling roughly 40,000 men, in 13 Corps Zone 10 miles to the south. The 23rd had 1,100 men. They built the deception in stages. For several days before the sonic equipment deployed, trucks displaying 30th and 79th divisional markings moved through towns in daylight along routes they knew the intelligence network would be watching. Soldiers wearing the wrong unit patches sat in cafes near the front and discussed crossing preparations in conversations designed to carry. Radio operators ran traffic matching the communications patterns of both divisions. By the time the visual component went up, German command had 3 days of layered data pointing at 13 Zone. More than 600 inflatable vehicles went into position along the Rhine: tanks, artillery, trucks, liaison planes. The 603rd arranged them with deliberate imperfection, because a formation arranged too precisely looks constructed rather than inhabited. Real vehicle parks accumulate the small misalignments of 1,000 individual decisions made under fatigue. Dummy laundry hung on lines between vehicles. Tire tracks were pressed into soft ground by dragging weighted equipment behind jeeps at night. Flash canisters fired at measured intervals to simulate muzzle blast from artillery that did not exist. Enemy aircraft photographed it all and sent the photographs back. At night, the sonic trucks ran their programs along the bank. Vehicles arriving in column, then tank engines, then the sounds of bridge engineers working at the water's edge. For 3 nights, the listening posts across the river logged all of it and filed their reports up the chain. German artillery responded by shelling the 13th sector. They hit rubber. The Rhine crossing in 6th Corps Zone took place on March 24th. The 30th Division's G2 report described the attack as a complete surprise to the enemy. A captured German order of battle overlay, recovered after the crossing, placed the 79th Infantry Division at almost exactly the position where the 23rd had been portraying it, 10 miles from where the 79th actually was. The units that had repositioned to defend the 13th sector were in the wrong place when the 9th Army came across. The real crossing met disorganized resistance. The 23rd was classified in 1945 and stayed that way for 50 years. When the files opened in 1996, the veterans were in their late 70s. Some gave interviews. Seymour Nussenbaum, one of the last surviving members to speak publicly, described the mission as designed to drive the Germans crazy. The German soldiers at the 13 Corps Front in March 1945 are not in any record that has received wide examination. The men who pressed headphones to their ears on the nights of the 18th through the 23rd, who logged the sounds of a division assembling to cross that never crossed, who filed their reports accurately, and then watched dawn come in and show them nothing on the far bank, had no mechanism for accounting for what they had experienced. Their instruments were functioning. The sound they heard was real, generated by real machines operated by real technicians working from precise Bell Lab specifications, aimed at them from 2 miles away with atmospheric firing tables developed in New Jersey specifically so they would hear it. What they heard simply was not what they thought they were hearing. In 2022, Congress awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to the surviving members of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, crediting the unit with saving between 15,000 and 30,000 American lives. The soldiers whose accurate reports redirected German units to the wrong riverbank are not in the citation. There is no equivalent acknowledgement on the German side for the men whose ears told them the truth about what they heard and who were wrong about what it meant.